What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Darian and I am the BowTie fragrance guy. I love looking good and smelling amazing. I've always said here on this channel that I truly believe that a fragrance is the perfect exclamation point to a well-dressed gentleman. There's a saying that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And I truly believe that. And I also believe that the way that you dress and the way that you carry yourself and a fragrance could go a long way to helping you make a great first impression. So if you'd like to hear about that kind of content, then this might be a good channel for you to subscribe to. So why don't you go ahead and consider hitting that subscribe button. And while you're at it, go ahead and click the bell icon as well. That way you get notified every time I release a new video. So on today's video, guys, we're going to be talking about the top 10 designer fragrances that I've chosen to wear this upcoming fall season. I love when the fall comes because I get to really start to change up the fragrances that I've been wearing for the previous 3-4 months or so during the spring and summer season. So I'm always excited about fall. I love fall for fragrances. I love fall for menswear. I love fall because it's time for football. I just love the fall. Not to mention the fact that my birthday falls during the fall season as well. So anyway, enough about that. If you want to know what my top 10 fall fragrances are going to be, designer fragrances that is, you know the routine, keep it locked right here. All right, guys, we are back. Thank you so much for keeping it locked in. Let's go ahead and jump right into this list. Coming in at the 10th spot this year, this fragrance was released, I think it was earlier last year, if I'm not mistaken, in 2019. And it's from the house of Versace, and this one is called Eros Flame. Eros Flame, the one in the red bottle. Now, when this first came out, I think I did mention the fact that I actually personally appreciate this one a little bit more than the original. Now, I definitely can detect the original Versace Eros in this fragrance, but this one is a little bit more toned down, and for me, I actually like that. This one actually features a very nice citrusy opening, but then when it starts to dry down, you get into some more woody, spicier elements. But what I really like about it is the dry down, where you get a very nice tonka bean vanilla combination. And again, for me, on my skin, those kind of notes tend to work really well when it's cool or cold outside. So I love this one right here from the house of Versace. This one comes in at the 10th spot. This is Eros Flame. All right, guys, and coming in at the 9th spot, this one comes from the house of Giorgio Armani, and this is Acqua Absolute. I talked about this one in a recent video when I talked about the fragrances that no one was really talking about. So again, I'm not really sure why a lot of people didn't receive this well. I have my own thoughts and theories about it. And it could be just that, thoughts and theories. I don't know. But whatever the case may be, this is one that I really enjoy. Now, I like to kind of mix it up each season. I like to have a fragrance that I can wear more formally. I like to have a fragrance that I can wear to work, whatever the case may be, just a versatile scent. And I also like to have one that's kind of playful that I can just kind of wear anytime. And that's what this one feels. That's the void this one feels on this list. It does have a very aquatic marine opening that will remind you somewhat of some of the previous releases from this lineup. But what I really like about it is when it starts to dry down, you get a nice patchouli note in this. The patchouli really gives it some great contrast from that marine aquatic type opening that you're accustomed to from fragrances from this lineup. And when it gets to the dry down of the fragrance, I mean, you start to get some labdanum, some tonka bean. Tonka bean is probably a note that you will hear echoed a lot on this list because again, it's a sweeter note, and I like those sweet fragrances when it gets cool outside. So coming in at the 9th spot from the house of Giorgio Armani, this is Acqua Absolute. All right, ladies and gentlemen, coming in at the 8th spot, this fragrance comes from the house of Chanel, and this is Chanel Allure Homme Sport Eau Extreme. Chanel Allure Homme Sport Eau Extreme. Another fragrance right here that offers a really great contrast. You know, the opening of this is very fresh. Very fresh opening. But again, on the dry down, you start to get into the woodier notes. There is some sandalwood in this fragrance, but most importantly, the main player to me in this is, again, that note of tonka bean. As I just said again, when I talked about the previous fragrance, when this time of year, sweeter fragrances really work well in cool temperatures. For me, in the fall season, that's when you are going to see more of the sweeter fragrances. For me, it gets a little bit more in the resinous type category when we start talking winter, when it's even, the temperatures are even colder outside, but when it's kind of cool, I just really like fragrances that feature notes like tonka bean and vanilla. And this is a great one. Again, it opens up kind of fresh. It has some mint in here as well. Beautiful scent right here. Very underrated. I think kind of gets overshadowed by Bleu de Chanel and Chanel Allure Homme d'Edition Blanche. Sometimes this one kind of gets lost in the shuffle to me a little bit, but it's a great fragrance, again, from the house of Chanel. This is Chanel Allure Homme Sport Eau Extreme. All right, guys, so coming in at the 7th spot, this fragrance is from the house of Paco Rabanne, and this one is 1 Million Prive. 1 Million Prive. I'm going back to some of my oldies but goodies for this fall. This is one I've talked about before on the channel, I'm sure. I know I've talked about it several times. And this fragrance, again, to really sum it up, reminds me of the smell of an apple pie. So if you haven't smelled this one and you smelled Wajan from Parfums de Marly or Ambre Narguilé, which is another fragrance that this one really reminds a lot of folks of. Again, you get that really kind of spicy, warm, sweet apple pie kind of vibe from this. It features notes of myrrh. It's kind of resinous. With that, you have tonka bean, of course, tonka bean absolute. Just a beautiful fragrance right here, guys. Hookah tobacco is another note in here. Great fragrance to wear in the fall season. I think about fall, I think about Thanksgiving, you think about apple pie, you think about this one right here, 1 Million Prive. Awesome fall scent, of course, that's why it made this list from the house of Paco Rabanne. This is 1 Million Prive. All right, guys, and coming in at the 6th spot this year, this fragrance comes from the house of Dolce & Gabbana, and this is the 1 Eau de Parfum Intense. The 1 Eau de Parfum Intense. I think this one might have been released earlier this year. It was either late last year or earlier this year, but whatever the case may be, this is a good one. I don't get a lot of the elements from the original Dolce & Gabbana The One, which is cool to me. I mean, I think the original Dolce & Gabbana The One, the EDT, and then the EDP, I think that's perfectly fine to have two fragrances that closely resemble one another as much as they do. So I welcome something like this that gives me a totally different take on the scent DNA of the original. And so this one is kind of gives you, again, another fragrance with somewhat of a contrast with a kind of neroli type opening on this one. But really the star players, of course, are in the mid and the dry down. You have some leather in here. You kind of have a slightly sweet, a little bit spicy note that you get from cardamom in here. And there's also labdanum on the dry down. So it really starts to get into some of those sweeter, a little bit more resinous notes on the dry down when it kind of takes over from the neroli note. But it's a good one, guys. I really like this one, and I'm going to be wearing it this fall. So that's why I made the 6th spot. This is Dolce & Gabbana The One Eau de Parfum Intense. All right, guys, so coming in at the 5th spot this year, this fragrance comes from the house of Guerlain, and this is L'Homme Ideal, or L'Homme Ideal, as some of the fancy folks like to pronounce it. This one comes in at, this is the EDT, this comes in at the 5th spot right here. And this is just one of the ones that I always look forward to wearing in the fall season. This one, of course, gives you that vibe of cherry. You know, you have to say a vibe of cherry because you know there'll be someone down in the comment section saying, yeah, man, ain't no cherry in that. There's no cherry note in that. So look, I understand that, but that is the vibe that it gives off. Whatever the accord is that's causing that, it gives a vibe of cherry. But of course, you have the almond here. Oh man, spicy almond, cherry, vanilla type vibe you get from this is just perfect, again, for the fall season. It's a little bit light the way that it wears, but it's really good when it's cool outside, not cold. From the house of Guerlain, this is L'Homme Ideal EDT. All right, guys, now coming in at the 4th spot, this one is from the house of Maison Margiela, the replica line, and this one is Jazz Club. Jazz Club. This one right here was love at first sniff for me. I love Jazz Club. It has a boozy accord that comes from rum. You have vanilla in this as well. And there's actually a little bit of vetiver in here. I actually get a little bit of vetiver to start to dry down. But whatever the case may be, again, another great fragrance to wear in the fall season. It's a little bit fresh in the opening and sweet as it dries down. Perfect combination to wear, again, when it's cool outside. So coming in at the 4th spot from the house of Maison Margiela, the replica line. This one is Jazz Club. All right, guys, so coming in at the 3rd spot, we're at the top 3 fragrances for my fall designer list. This one comes from the house of Tom Ford. This is Noir Extreme. Noir Extreme. Now, this has been dethroned from the #1 spot. If I'm being honest with you guys, I could choose this as #1 every year, but who wants to do that, right? That might get kind of boring to have the same fragrance over and over every year at the #1 spot. But guys, you know how I feel about this fragrance. This is my baby right here. So I want to thank you, Tom Ford, wherever you are in the world, in 2012 for creating Noir Extreme EDP. This stuff is excellent, man. It has that coffee in it. I always talk about that. It's a dessert. So it gives off a very dessert-like vibe that you get from this, and I love this stuff. It also has vanilla in this as well. It has a lot of sweeter elements that you get from Noir Extreme. And I think, really, just to sum it up, man, that's just what it really come across to me as, is a dessert-like fragrance. And I love gourmands. This is one of my favorites of all time right here from Tom Ford. Again, I'm not gonna go on and on about this fragrance. I'll just leave it there. One of my favorites coming in at the 3rd spot. This is Noir Extreme. All right, guys, so coming in at the #2 spot, this fragrance comes from the house of Valentino, and this is just the original Valentino Cuomo. Valentino Cuomo. I love this bottle. You talk about a bottle that looks good sitting on a dresser or in a collection. This is it right here. I was very, very excited. I remember when I got this fragrance. This is one that I really, really wanted because I had a co-worker that had this, and I smelled it, and I wanted it for a long time. And for some reason, it took me a while to get my hands on it, but I was so happy when I finally did. This features notes that I really enjoy in fragrances. You get a roasted coffee in this one, but you also have guanduja cream. I think that's how you pronounce that. Guanduja cream is actually something that they use as like a spread. It has like a chocolatey hazelnut vibe. So that's what I get from it, more of that hazelnut. So imagine roasted coffee, hazelnut, a little bit of leather on the dry down. Love this stuff right here, guys. Of course, and again, perfect recipe for a great fall fragrance. So that's why I made the #2 spot this year. This is Valentino Cuomo. All right, guys, I'm coming in at the #1 spot. This is one of my favorite fall fragrances of all time. One of my favorite fragrances, honestly, of all time. From the house of now Mugler, this is Pure Habanne. Pure Habanne. I think this has made the list. Every year I've done a fall list, but I don't think it's never made the #1 spot. But it deserves to make the #1 spot because I really, absolutely love this fragrance. Again, I'm going to say it has a vibe of cherry. So it kind of smells like a nice cherry tobacco fragrance. A nice cherry tobacco fragrance. That's the best way for me to describe this scent, man, but it's just one of my favorites. And I always say this when I talk about this fragrance. It just reminds me of the good days, the good old days in the fragrance community. When I first really got into reviewing, this was one of the first fragrances that I got, learned about note breakdowns and finding out that I really love the note of tobacco. And when I heard it had a vibe of cherry with it as well, I had to have it, got my hands on it. It has been one of my favorite fragrances ever since. And I absolutely love this stuff. And that's why it deserves the #1 spot this year, because I am going to be rocking it a lot. From the house of Mugler, this is Pure Habanne. All right, guys, that's it. That's my time. I thank you so much for taking the time out, of course, to watch this video as I gave you guys my top 10 fall designer fragrances that I'll be wearing in the year of 2020. I always appreciate you guys taking a moment to check these videos out because, of course, you could have been doing anything else in the world, but you took the time to watch this video, and I sincerely appreciate that. So don't forget to take the time to like, comment, and subscribe. And go ahead and make sure you're sharing these videos out to some other folks that could use this type of information or will find it entertaining or interesting, because I'm your guy, Darren, the BowTie Fragrance Guy. I love to look good, and of course, I love to smell amazing. So until next time, keep looking good, keep smelling even better. I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.